New on the Creation Club is an Anti-Materiel rifle. This is exciting because we remember well the Anti-Materiel rifle from Fallout New Vegas. It's the very gun that the NCR sniper was using in New Vegas's opening cinematic. But it was sadly missing from Fallout 4. Well, it looks like with this creation, it's back. It's being sold as part of the astoundingly awesome tales. Would you pull the trigger? What's that all about? In life, are our actions predetermined? Is our fate sealed? Or are we mere puppets to a preordained destiny? And really, does it matter if we end up with a devastatingly powerful anti-materiel rifle? Rifle created by Stefan Asksas Endgall. Quest created by Chris Takahashi. Creations obtained through Quest and Daisy in Good Neighbor. It appears to be a single rifle and a quest, being sold for 400 credits. Is it worth it? Let's find out. The next time we arrive in the Commonwealth, we start the quest, The Paper Mirror. Investigate the Museum of Witchcraft. We've been here before. I covered the Museum of Witchcraft in a dedicated video that you can watch here. But heading back for this quest, we can go through the front door since it's opened by now, and we find something new. In the middle of the ruined museum, we find a note lit by candlelight in a display case, and the note is called Sweet's Story? What? That's my character's name. How could my character's story be on this note? Sweets picked up the note. It was kind of a shock seeing her name there, not that there wasn't a reasonable explanation for it. It could be she just misread the page. It could be the museum just had her spooked. Or maybe some other wastelander just happened to share the same name, Sweets, and the note was meant for her. Whatever the reason, Sweets decided to keep reading. Why the hell not? There was no guarantee the words on the page were referring to her. It was only a paper mirror, a reflection made up of words on a page. Besides, the only way to know for sure was to keep reading to the end. But even then, having read the page and learned her future, there was no reason to take the words seriously. At some point, she would go back outside and wander the wasteland again, and perhaps even forget about the note altogether. Eventually, those travels would bring her to the Dugout Inn in Diamond City. Of course, Sweets wasn't there on business. She just wanted to relax. But as she walked into the inn amidst the glow of neon, something to the right caught her eye. Posted on the wall was a bounty for a killer named Zane. Someone wanted him dead. We now have to go check the bounty notice at the Dugout Inn. I already have some major issues with this quest, but I'm going to save my criticism for the very end. Heading to Diamond City, we can run on over to the Dugout Inn, and inside on the bulletin board, we find a new bulletin, just as we were told. Bounty, wanted and conquered. Open notice to anyone with a lot of guts and in need of caps. A wastelander named Zane has put together a gang that's been terrorizing the area near Concord. He should be considered armed and extremely dangerous. Keep what you kill, no other reward given. Well, looks like we need to head to Concord. Heading to Concord, we can clear the raiders who usually spawn here, and then head on over to the Concord Speakeasy, which we should know pretty well. It's likely one of the first ruins we explore in the game. Inside, we see a body through a hole in the wall. This is the corpse of Zane, and on his inventory, we find Zane's story. The bounty on Zane's head had grown to 1,000 caps. That's how notorious he'd become. But he knew that it didn't matter how expensive the bounty got, or how many hunters came after him. All he had to do was flip the book ahead and read the next chapter of his story. It told him everything he needed to know. He knew where the attackers were coming from, and when they'd arrive. The mirror showed him everything. But every time he turned a page, it brought him closer to the end. Now, there were no more pages left. Someone was coming for him, someone bad, and no amount of preparation would help him survive. At first, Zane refused to believe it. He tore out the page in anger and slammed it on the table. When the time came, he would prove the mirror was a lie. He'd bunker down in the old Concord Speakeasy and kill whatever jerk came walking through the door. But when he read the words and discovered the hunter had a mirror of their own, he knew there was no escape. He was going to die tonight, and his friends would soon follow. The only measure of satisfaction he could get was to kill himself before the bounty hunter got there first. So he sat down and took out the vodka, the one he'd been saving for after he got out of the Commonwealth. He popped it open, took a sip, and with his other hand, he pulled the trigger. Sure enough, on the ground we find an empty bottle of vodka, a 10mm pistol, and a spattering of blood. The lay of the gun and the direction of the blood spatter tells us that he was left-handed. On the table, we find 2 notes. The first, a handwritten note. "It will betray you too." And the next one, stabbed into the table with a combat knife called Zane's Associates. Silas sent to Faded Glory Laundromat on business. Connor, this jerk stole the anti-materiel rifle we got from the gunners, I know it. Heard he's starting a new career near Green Tech Genetics. Gonna have to pay him a visit. Ivy, almost forgot about her, probably still waiting at Prost Bar. Right, so the scavenger hunt continues. We now need to hunt down 3 of Zane's associates. We'll start by heading to Swan's Pond. I covered this location and Prost Bar in my video on Swan's Pond that you can watch here. We find Prost Bar on the western side of Swan's Pond. Going down a short staircase, we can open the blue door to the bar. Inside, we find it pretty much as we left it, except off to the west, we see something new. A body on the ground. But this has nothing to do with the quest that we're currently on. This is part of another Creation Club creation that I have yet to cover, so we're going to ignore this for now. To continue with this quest, we have to head to the billiard room, which we can access through a hallway to the south. As we get close...
Please, let me go! Don't shoot me.
But even if we choose not to shoot her, and we simply get too close...
Let's do this!
Ivy begins to attack. At this point, we could kill her.
You're dead.
On her corpse, we find Ivy's story. Ivy knew she had to run. She had to get far away from the Commonwealth, to a place where she could start over. She didn't mean to kill him. What happened was an accident. He told her he'd done this before, that he had experience with chems. It didn't dawn on her until later that he was just trying to impress her. The problem was she hadn't heard from Zane in weeks. They had met only a month earlier at a bar in Goodneighbor. He said he was a smuggler. When she told him her story, he sympathized with her. He even promised to help her get to Far Harbor for a price. Something about him scared her, but she was desperate to leave and didn't know any other way, so she decided to believe him. The plan was to meet here at the Prost Bar. Perhaps if she just stayed in place, Zane would come for her. It was too dangerous outside, and there were enough rations in the bar to hold her for another week. She just had to be patient. Someone would come. Unfortunately for her, someone did. However, if we choose not to kill her, our only option is to leave the bar. As soon as we return to Swan's Pond, we get attacked by bounty hunters. On the body of one of them, we find a note, Bounty, wanted in Beacon Hill. And we see that it reads exactly like the bounty we picked up at the Dugout Inn, only this one has our name on it. These bounty hunters weren't here for Ivy, they were here for us. If we head back into Prost Bar and head to the back room, we see that Ivy has gone, but she left a note. It reads the same as the story we found on her inventory if we chose to kill her, except that the ending has changed. Instead of saying, "Unfortunately someone found her," it says, "And someone found her." But while the hunter came to find a killer, something told her to stay her hand. It could have been pity for the young woman, or perhaps it was a desire to circumvent fate. Whatever the reason, Sweets chose not to do what few before her dared to do. She rejected the story that was written in the mirror and took her fate into her own hands. When the other hunters came, Sweets fought them off. In that moment, Ivy saw her chance to escape. She knew of another exit, one where she wouldn't be followed. Part of her wanted to say thank you to the stranger for sparing her life, but she couldn't risk dying along with her. In the end, she left behind the pages of her mirror. Maybe that would be thanks enough. One down, 2 more to go. To find the next member of Zane's gang, we need to travel to Lexington. Traveling west of the Super Duper Mart, we find an unmarked location called Laundromat. I covered this place in my video on unmarked locations that you can watch here. Inside, we immediately get attacked by a raider.
We've got this. Keep it cool.
This was Silas, and he goes down quickly. On his corpse, we find Silas's story. Zane handed Silas the pages that pertained to him and told him to head out to Lexington. They'd been stashing the bodies in the old washing machines for weeks now. Silas nodded his head reluctantly. The truth is, he didn't want anything to do with whatever voodoo was in that book. The thing spooked him enough just by having his name in it. But what spooked him even more was when they found the book, some of the pages were missing. The body is stored here, maybe a reference to the full set of human bones we find in one of the dryers. However, these bones are brittle and dried, clearly well over 200 years old, unlikely to be the victims of Zane's Raider gang. Next, we'll head towards Green Tech Genetics to find Connor. The marker on our map sends us to the Raider encampment, blockading the bridge. While we kill all the Raiders, we discover that Connor is one of them. And after killing him, on his body we find a penetrating .38 caliber anti-materiel rifle, and also Connor's story. Connor ripped the pages from the book one night when Zane was sleeping. He knew the boss hadn't gotten to that part yet, or else Connor would be dead. The truth was, he'd been thinking of killing Zane for weeks now. He was talking nonsense about retiring, going to Far Harbor with some girl he met at a bar. Connor knew Zane was full of crap, but he also knew he was getting soft. That's why he built a little hideout near Green Tech Genetics, in the tall building by the river. When the time was right, he'd set up base there and start his own crew, with Zane's money and his gun. And what a gun it was. It was called an anti-materiel rifle, and it ate through power armor like a hot knife through butter. Zane had no use for it. The only reason he had it was because of that book, so it was only right for Connor to use the same book to relieve him of the burden. After clearing the Raider camp, we can use the gondola to head to the tall tower, and from here we can inspect our brand new anti-materiel rifle. We find some Raiders over by this bridge. I sat here trying to pick them off for what felt like forever, until finally I gave up. After all this, is this gun no good? Well, we need to head back to the shop to find out. Back at the shop, the anti-materiel rifle is a thing of beauty. It is absolutely gorgeous to behold. And I quickly discovered that the version I got must have been randomly generated, because it dropped with a .38 caliber receiver, dealing only 72 damage. Instead, we can upgrade this thing to have a calibrated .50 caliber powerful receiver, which bumps the damage from this thing way up to 154. The anti-materiel rifle has many of the mods we're familiar with from the .50 caliber sniper rifle, but we see that it has a few new barrel options: short, medium, and long encased barrel. The long encased barrel has the best accuracy, best range, and best recoil, though it deals a bit less damage than the short or long barrel. The long barrel has better damage and better range, so I'm thinking the benefit of the long encased barrel is that it has better recoil. It has 4 stock options, including a new one called the Marksman Light Stock, which is just a lighter version of the Marksman stock. It has 3 magazine sizes, small, medium, and large, and a wide range of scopes, including all of the recon scopes. And as for muzzle, it supports compensator, muzzle brake, and a suppressor. The suppressor reduces range a little bit, but since it helps so much with recoil and is silent, I went ahead and chose that. The anti-materiel rifle has one new mod category: the bolt. We have 2 options: the standard bolt, which just says standard, or the custom bolt, which improves its rate of fire from 2 to 3. And it looks different. The standard bolt is black, the custom bolt has a twisting pattern on it. I am blown away by the beauty of this weapon. And look at that recon scope. This has been custom skinned to match the look and feel of the anti-materiel rifle. Remember, these recon scopes in the vanilla game are a strange manila color. This one is black. It looks great. We find beautiful engravings on the right side of the weapon, and the barrel is chock full of detail. We can even see the individual screws holding it together, and they've even included a raised grip on the silencer, useful for twisting it on and off. There's a slight green patina, or patina, on the pattern, which makes it look much more realistic, and a tiny dent in the recon scope. The recon scope is all black with a blue band around it. On the left side of the gun, we find more swirling patterns, more of that green patina, and an engraving, New California Republic. And we see the two-headed bear by the bolt. So this weapon managed to find its way all the way from either California or the Mojave wasteland to Massachusetts. And the detail spiral on that bolt is really something else. I am just blown away by this weapon. I was curious though, the version I got dropped with a penetrating legendary effect. A nice effect, but maybe not the most useful. I wanted to know if it always dropped with the same legendary effect. Now we remember from the creation description that we can also find one from Daisy and Goodneighbor. So heading on over to Goodneighbor, sure enough on her inventory we find a Hunter's powerful anti-materiel rifle, which does 50% more damage against animals. Again, not the most useful legendary effect, but this one does use 50 caliber rounds. When I tried reloading a previous save from before I installed the creation to see if I could get the gun to spawn in Daisy's inventory with a different legendary effect, sadly I found the same legendary effect, the Hunter's one, every single time. However, the mods on the weapon itself changed. And that's because this legendary effect is intentional. Inspecting the gun we buy from Daisy, we discover that it looks completely different. Gone are the intricate engravings and the NCR text and logo. Instead, we see scratched into the metal, big monster killing machine, and 8 ticks. After upgrading this weapon, I went back to the Raider Tower next to Green Tech Genetics for another go with those Raiders on the other end of the bridge. Much better. In the right hands, this weapon can be incredibly deadly. I was even able to two-shot a Mirelurk Queen.
Here we go.
Now, I said earlier that I had some problems with the quest, and my issues with the quest continued through the entire thing after every note we found. The problem with the quest is the story itself and the way it was told. The story itself is a simple scavenger hunt. We just go from location to location to location, read one note here, kill this guy there. But in addition to that, the story is very confusing. First, we have to believe that Zane found some sort of all-knowing book, a book that he's calling a mirror. And in this mirror, written on the pages, he sees his story and the stories of his gang members written out. Alright, a creepy plot device, but the problem with this plot device is it's never tied in with Fallout lore. It reads more like a creepypasta that you'd find online. We don't know where this mirror book came from. How did Zane get his hands on it? We don't know where it got its magical abilities. Was it written by Unqualtoth? Does it tie in somehow with the Cabot family? Or maybe the Dunwich Company? Or could this be the Krivbekne, or a book like it? We don't know because we're never told. All we know is that it's a magical book that can predict the future, but more specifically the future about how you're gonna die. My next problem is how the story is written on these pages. The pages are used to tell the player where to go next to find the rifle or to find the next person, but it's written in the voice of an omniscient narrator. This format, this style, flies in the face of everything we've ever found in Fallout 4. The stories and journals that we find in the game are either news reports written by journalists, pre-war advertisements, or one-to-one messages written from one person to another. If we find notes, they're either written from one person to another or they read like diary entries. The pages we find with this quest are none of that. It's written like a novel, and I get why this was done. It's supposed to be a magical book written in the third person that's telling the story of your life. The additional problem is that it's also written sort of as an internal monologue. For example, in Zane's story, on one page we read that every time he turned the page, it brought him closer to the end. Now there were no pages left, he reached the end, and someone was coming for him. However, in the very note that we're reading, and in any of the notes on the table, we don't read what it was that he read. It said that what he read angered him so much that he tore it out of the book and slammed it down on the table. So naturally, we would expect to find his story's ending lying on the table, but neither of the two notes we find on the table talk about how Zane is going to die. They don't tell the end of his story. You see the problem? So if this was supposed to be a magical mirror book, we should be able to open it and read Zane's future that he read that caused him to despair and commit suicide. But that's not what we read. Instead, we read his thought process as he's reading the future in the book that he finds. We learn that after reading his ending, he decides to thumb his nose at fate and to bunker down in the speakeasy. But then he reads even further. Don't know why he didn't do that from the beginning, but nevertheless he reads further and discovers that the person fated to kill him, presumably the sole survivor, also has a mirror, a page from the same book. And without explaining why, for some reason, this knowledge sends him into despair, and his only alternative is to drink vodka and shoot himself in the head. But why? Why would knowing that his assassin also has a mirror cause him to commit suicide? His other gang members had a mirror. That knowledge didn't bother him. Additionally, the very act of him committing suicide proves that the book is not always right. If the book had told him that he would die by committing suicide, then the last thing he would do would be to bunker down in the conquered speakeasy where he already knew he was going to commit suicide. Instead, the book told him that someone was going to assassinate him. And clearly that didn't happen, which means the magic book is wrong. And it's not wrong only once, it's wrong twice. Remember, Ivy's story, ripped from the same magic book, is supposed to end with her being killed in the Prost bar. But we do have the option to leave her alive, which would make that book wrong. There's no scenario where Ivy reads the book and discovers that she has been spared by the sole survivor. So then we've got this book that may be right, but is often wrong. So what's the point? There are so many other things about this story that just don't make any sense at all. First, what was a page doing in the Museum of Witchcraft written for the sole survivor? Did Zane put it there? Did he rip it out of the book? Why did this book talk about everyone in Zane's gang and some sole survivor that Zane had never met before? Second, why was there a page on the table next to Zane that said it will betray you too? This was a handwritten note, presumably from Zane just before he committed suicide. But what is it that will betray us? The book? The book we never get? We only find pages from the book? But the pages from the book aren't actually part of the book. They're just narrations of other people's thought processes while they're reading pages from the book. Also, the story we can piece together from these various pages isn't finished and doesn't really make sense. We get that Zane met Ivy in a bar. He felt sorry for her after hearing her story. Maybe he fell in love with her, told her to wait for him at Prost Bar while he dealt with some business. His plan was to travel to Far Harbor with her. But Connor found out about this, and so he decides to kill Zane and steal the gun. But he doesn't kill Zane. He just sneaks into his room one night, pulls these pages out of a book, and steals the gun. We don't know why he suddenly decided to spare Zane's life. And none of this explains Silas's role in any way. Zane just tells him that the book says you need to go to the laundromat. Silas, who doesn't like the book because he thinks it's voodoo, goes to the laundromat. Anyway, why? Yes, the note mentioned the bodies in the laundry machines, but what was Silas supposed to do with them? Watch them? Organize them by part? Make sure they're all really dead? On Silas's note, we learn that Zane and his gang found the book somewhere, we're not told where, and that when they found the book, some of the pages were missing. I'm presuming that some of those missing pages were the pages that were deposited in the Museum of Witchcraft that were addressed to the sole survivor. But who put them there? And who wrote the bounty to kill Zane? And not only that, but the bounty to kill the sole survivor. Magic? Was it just magic? Okay. Magic, then. One of the things I like best about Fallout lore is that it tries to steer clear of magic. Sure, there's this magical thing that happens when a human is exposed to too much radiation that can sometimes turn you into a ghoul, okay. Then there's the whole Dunwich thing with Unqualtuth and the Krivbekna, alright. But those aren't my favorite stories in the Fallout universe. My favorite stories in the Fallout universe are the ones that are rooted in reality. They're rooted in some sort of technology or a vision of technology found in the real world. Those stories just make the Fallout universe feel more real. These stories that depend on magic and omniscient narrators feel less real, and they detract from the world. When we got the prototype Gauss rifle early on in the history of the Creation Club, I complained that the quest they were advertising was a simple fetch and retrieve quest. Go kill some gunner at Gunner's Plaza, and presto, you got yourself the prototype Gauss rifle. That's not a quest, and I complained about that. I'm grateful that the creators took time and energy to try and spice up the whole fetch and retrieve process. This is not just a simple go kill a guy at Gunner's Plaza quest, but it's only a step above. We're still just going from guy to guy, looting a corpse here, killing a guy there, to ultimately find the weapon. And I appreciate the effort that went into this story, but ultimately I am disappointed by it. Even though I want to see Creation Club creations like this have real good stories, in this particular case, I would have preferred the gun without the quest. Now, after I recorded this, I talked with some friends who were familiar with the story to see what they had to say. I wanted to see if maybe I missed something, or maybe if someone else interpreted the quest in a different way. And I wanted to see if maybe there was something obvious about the quest that I just missed. Maybe I missed the whole point. Some said that they felt that the point of the quest was to demonstrate that some people resign themselves to what they perceive as their fate, while others create their own destiny. The author may have deliberately not added any details about the origin of the book. Instead of creating exposition that says where the book comes from, he may have wanted to leave that open to interpretation, which is a different stylistic choice. And here's an explanation for why the book sometimes got things wrong. The book rewrites itself after people make decisions. For example, when Zane read in the book that an assassin was coming to kill him, he chose to end his own life, rather than allow the book to predict his fate. After he ended his life, the pages of the book that were on his body rewrote themselves to reflect what happened. So when we got Zane's story, it described everything that really happened. He drank vodka and committed suicide with a 10mm pistol. Even though when Zane read his own fate, he read a completely different fate, because he hadn't at that time decided to commit suicide yet. This feature of the book also explains what went on with Connor. He had only thought about killing Zane to steal the gun and make a run for it, but the book read his mind and wrote down his plans. The book was in Zane's hands, so at any time, Zane could have flipped through the pages and read that Connor was thinking about killing him. This is why Connor had to act. He hadn't fully decided whether or not he wanted to kill Zane, and in the end, he chose not to. But the simple fact that he was thinking about it was damaging enough, and he didn't want Zane to find that out. So he snuck into Zane's room, stole the gun, and then ripped out the pages of the book that talked about what his plans were. This ability of the book to rewrite itself is also on display with Ivy. In the initial book, her fate is that she gets killed by an assassin who finds her at the Prost bar, and yet if we choose to back away, the page says something completely different, and that's because it rewrites itself if we choose to spare her life. The quest may also be sort of a meta-commentary on bounty quests in general. In most bounty quests, we get a bounty, you mindlessly kill target A, B, or C. In this case, target C, such as Ivy for example, isn't really a killer. And we only realize that if when we walk into the bar, we walk in slowly, giving Ivy the opportunity to say, "Stop, please stop." Some will just walk in guns blazing and kill her without realizing that she wasn't a killer. Those I talked to agreed that the existence of this magical thought-reading book is a bit of a leap of faith, but we can compare it to the leap of faith we have to take to believe in an unknowable supernatural force like Unqualtuth, or a magical artifact we might find in the Dunwich building. Those I talked to said that both have merit, and that Fallout has a supernatural aspect to it that justifies either. It's just stylistic choice. And that makes a lot of sense. I still prefer quests that are a little bit more grounded in reality, that don't rely too much on magic, that don't have a lot of backstory that isn't explained in the actual quest, that doesn't need to be interpreted by the player. I prefer finding solid clues and being able to piece together a story based on the evidence, not having to imagine a myriad of possible evidences to support whatever story I want to tell. But you know, that's just me, and there is no right or wrong to this. Now, ultimately, the gun is amazing. I'm so excited by the Anti-Materiel rifle that I'm probably going to be using it as my primary weapon for some time, because I just want to spend some time with this gun. The gun is definitely lore-friendly. Of course it is. We first found it in Fallout New Vegas. The existence of the Anti-Materiel rifle in the Fallout universe is clearly canon. But the story accompanying this weapon, in my opinion, is not lore-friendly, and most definitely is not canon. So ultimately we walk away from this experience never knowing how this weapon from the Mojave wasteland, emblazoned with NCR insignia, found its way to the Commonwealth. And that's the question I wanted to have answered. If this weapon came with a quest that explained that, I would be a very happy guy. But sadly it didn't. So, is it worth 400 credits? As much as I love this weapon, I'm having a very hard time justifying the price. We can do a quick comparison to other stuff on the Creation Club right now. I just finished reviewing the Captain Cosmos creation, which is currently selling for 700 credits, 300 more than this Anti-Materiel rifle. With that creation, we get a brand new lore-friendly dungeon with 5 or 6 terminals chocked full of lore, 2 brand new suits of Captain Cosmos power armor, with 3 never-before-seen power armor paint schemes, USSA, ArcJet, and Repcon, not even including all of the faction and hot rod paint schemes, 4 new wall posters in the settlement build menu, a brand new spacesuit, and a new gun. All of that for 700 credits. Or, for greater than half the price of that creation, we can buy this one, and we walk away with a short story about a magical book and 1 gun. Well, 2 guns if you count the Hunter's one on Daisy's inventory. I don't see the value comparison there. I think we get much more bang for our buck with the Captain Cosmos creation. Now that said, I'm still glad I bought this thing. Not just because I'm a YouTuber and this is part of my job, but also as a fan of Fallout 4 and Fallout New Vegas, I'm really happy to get my hands on the Anti-Materiel rifle. That said, I think it's overpriced. But those are just my thoughts, ladies and gentlemen, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. What did you think when you were going through this quest in your own game? Do you agree that it felt out of place, or do you disagree with me? And did it enthrall you from start to finish? Share with me your thoughts in the comments section below. I publish many new videos each and every week here on my channel, so if you want to make sure you don't miss my next episode, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. I have a shirt shop with completely unique designs that you can't find anywhere else. My shirts come in a variety of both men's and women's sizes, and in a wide array of colors. You can find my designs on more than shirts, smartphone cases, mugs, posters, prints, etc. So if interested, you can find a link to my shop in the description below, or you can click here. If you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. But more than anything, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon with a brand new video.